Okay. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Managing Personal Finance. Today we will discuss how we can empower yourself with the knowledge and skills to make better informed personal financial decisions around the key financial pillars of saving, spending, and borrowing and planning. Before we get started, I'm going to go through some housekeeping to ensure you can interact with us during this meeting. If you have any questions, you can post them in the Q&A box, or you can unmute yourself or raise a hand and we will select you to speak. Today, I would like to welcome our speaker. We have Mr. Smith, who works with the Prudential for over 20 years. He also led several of group insurance financial wellness initiatives and previously represented group insurance as a member of the team that created the Prudential Pathways program. Anthony received a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Rutgers, the state of University of New Jersey, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Smith, and we are so glad to have you here with us today to share your insight. So I hand everything over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Keisha. And I'm happy to be here. Very happy to be talking to folks from my hometown. Yes, I work at Prudential, but more important, I'm a lifelong resident of Long Branch, New Jersey. So 54 years here. And I'm really happy to be here because you mentioned all of my accolades and the work that I've done at Prudential. And I intentionally didn't bring a presentation because I really wanted this to be dialogue. Time and time we do different presentations and we talk about the ins and outs of financial planning, financial security. But what's important to me is that people actually take action. And I thought that through a conversation, some dialogue here, we can actually get people to take action, because at the end of the day, that's the most important part of it. And what's interesting, or what I found at Prudential and what I want to hopefully convey in this conversation, is that each and every one of us can take action, right? So oftentimes, and I know growing up that I thought you had to have a certain amount of money to start to do something. I thought you have to have a certain amount of knowledge, but with today's your computer, with the opportunity to work with financial advisors, the information that's out there that's right at our fingertips, we can all have that opportunity to start to think about how we can plan or how we can do something around our finances to create that financial security. So I like to start by using that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I know you can use that in so many different spaces, but for financial, when we're talking about financial security, that is very impactful. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, because you have to have a goal when you're thinking about financial security, right? You have to know what you're trying to get to. And so often when you don't have a goal, you find yourself just going in cycles, going in circles, and you may find yourself in a position where it's hard to climb out, such as debt. And I want to start with talking about debt because I've been in debt myself. 80% of Americans have some form of debt. And some debt is good, of course, because we need to have, credit scores. Where not all of us are millionaires where we can purchase everything, with cash. So we have to have credit. But then a lot of debt isn't so good. And oftentimes the way we get ourselves in debt may not be our fault, but there's an opportunity to get out of debt. Because when you're in debt, a great friend of mine once said, debt is one of the second to, one of the greatest way to feel enslaved. Because when you're in debt, your money, you have to worry about, paying for whatever you have to pay for. You're not free with your money. Your financial security is at risk. Each month, the stress of having to pay the different bills is overwhelming. And when you're thinking about all of the good things you like to do with money, they have to be put aside because you have to be concerned about debt. But debt does not have to, be the end all be all. We all have an opportunity to get out of debt. And that's something that, as I said, growing up, I didn't realize that, right? There are little things that we can do, particularly at this time. If those of you, there are folks who know me in this town and, they may see that, I like to wear certain clothes, or I have certain suits, you have to start to think about what you need and what you want. And when you think about that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't, you can't treat yourself every so often, but it does mean that you have to think about what, you have it, when you think about what you're trying to achieve, you have to think about the choices that you make. So I mentioned failing to, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. First and foremost, you have to start with a plan. What is it that I want to achieve? It can be a short-term plan, it could be a long-term plan. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? Am I trying to, save enough money to go on a trip? Am I trying to save enough money to go for retirement? Or am I trying to do something that's in between to put money down for a house? So when you have a plan, that's the first piece of it. Knowing that there is something that you're trying to accomplish, a goal that's important to you. And hopefully that goal that's important to you inspires you or gives you the wherewithal to want to take those steps to get to that point. And so going back to debt, if indeed I wanted to say go on a trip, I planned on going on a trip in December, and I knew I needed $10,000 or $5,000 to go on that trip, and I'm taking the whole family. But I know that I'm overwhelmed with debt. So in other words, what definition of debt is when you owe more money than you're bringing in. So therefore, or when you have to, or not more, either when you owe money to someone, it could be either owing more money than you're taking in, or just owing some money. But for my particular example, I wanted to share. Imagine having to every month that I had money coming in, I had to pay it out for debt, right? So how possible is it for me to be able to go on that trip for $5,000 without putting myself in more debt? And it is possible. So when we think about that plan, we want to start with creating a budget, right? You want to, and how you create a budget to get yourself out of debt, you want to look at what all of your expenses are. And so what that means is you're bringing in, compared to what you're bringing in. You're bringing in $2,000 a month, or say $500 a month, and your rent is $200. Your car payment is $100. That's $300. You need to buy food. That's another $100, and then you have some other bills. Those other bills, you want to look to see where you can make a change with those other bills. For example, one person said to me, hey, I just don't make enough money. It's easy to talk about getting out of debt. It's easy for you to say so, but it's not possible for me. And I said, okay, well, before we do so, let's look at your budget. So we looked at the budget. We had the needs, right? The needs were living in a home. So we had to say $200. You had to, pay for the car $100, and you had your food $100. Then outside of that, there were those extra bills, right? They had the cable bill. You had your Netflix bill. You had your Hulu bill. You had your internet bill. So when I looked at that, I said, wait a second, you have 4 bills that kind of overlap each other, right? So when you need cable, Netflix, and Hulu as well, when they all do the same thing, while you also have the internet. So there are small things that you could think about doing. So, and it's really thinking about really, how do I start, right? And looking at what your bills are. So a quick start is, hey, do I need to have all 4? Am I watching all of those channels? So I go from, okay, say those bills are $25 each. I get rid of one of them. Say I get rid of the cable bill. Now I have an extra $25. I realize I don't need 2 other ones. I get rid of Hulu. Now I have an extra $50. So it's possible. So it's, then I look at, okay, I bought it, every month I'm buying a pair of sneakers, new sneakers. Do I need 2 pairs of sneakers? And we all know how that feeling is about getting something new, but in a couple of days, you don't have that same feeling, right? So, so there are many opportunities for each and every one of us to start to peel away from the debt when you're in that debt. And so I'm specifically talking to people right now who feel like they're in a position where they can't get out, and you can always get out, but you have to start somewhere. So again, you create a budget, understand what your responsibilities are, and and responsibilities mean what are the things you have to do versus what are the things you like to do. And I'm not saying that you're going to, prevent or keep yourself from doing everything fun, but what I am saying that when you are shackled in debt, then either you're continuing to get yourself in debt, which is going to just, snowball, have that snowball effect where you'll find yourself in a situation where you can't do the things that you like, or you can start to peel that debt away. And so looking at think about your goal, understanding what you're trying to achieve. Then you look at how you achieve it. What is the money that you need to come up with a plan to put that money together? So say if it's, I said $5,000. So you divide 5,000 by 12, whatever that is a month, looking to where you can cut some bills to get that. And you might say, hey, I can't go on that trip this year, and I might have to prolong the trip. So making small decisions that are important for your future, that may seem like it's something that's going to hamper you now, but it's really important for you to make those decisions because, my grandmother used to say, money doesn't grow on trees. And as I gotten older, you realize money doesn't grow on trees. And money, and what that means is, you see millionaires or folks who've made lots of money but didn't have a plan and they spent their money. That money just doesn't come back. So you really have to have a plan to make sure that you are securing you have financial security, and that you're able to do some of the things that you like to do. But do not put too many wants in front of your needs. So again, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I'm going to pause there and see if anyone has any questions regarding, debt and budgeting, because I really want to make sure that when we leave this conversation, people have at least the understanding, the tools to take action. Because when we finish this conversation, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what is the action that you're going to take? Because you can go through a lot of classes, have a lot of conversations, but if you don't individually take action yourself, then you're going to stay in the same place. And the goal is, to take action and start to move forward. So I'll just pause there and ask if you have any questions.
I have a question. I'm always curious. It's like you finally get yourself out of debt, and then now you have all this extra money, but you don't necessarily have a goal set in mind. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I have an extra $400 or $500 a month. Maybe I'll go get that new car. Maybe I'll finance this. Maybe I'll lease this. Maybe I'll put something on my credit card. What are your thoughts on that, on how to stay out of debt or things of that nature?
No, that is very tempting. I think about it when I think about the folks that are the most victimized by debt. You think about, and this is a time, what season is it right now, Keisha? It's tax season, right?
Right.
And folks think, okay, I have this extra money, and what am I going to do with it? Right. And so you really have to understand when I say goals, and I probably should have thought about, I wanted to make sure that when planning, that there are some opportunities to have fun, but you also have to have those long-term goals of putting, emergency savings. They say that most Americans don't have, $400, say an emergency comes with that they need $400, they don't have that emergency savings. So you should have those emergency savings. The time, I know at my job, there are cuts. People are losing their job. So you want to have from 3 to 6 months of your salary in savings. So that's one thing that has to be important. So you make sure before you think about going on that, using that money, buying a new car, right? That you make sure you have that 3 to 6 months of savings. So first, there you go. Right now, when I get the $500, when I get my income tax, what am I going to do? I'm not going to purchase another pair of, a new car, I'm going to make sure I have my savings. So good, you have your savings. And those are when I said you fail to plan, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Having, to your point, you have to have something that you're striving for. And we should all be striving to have that financial security, right? It's interesting. Again, another thing is, my grandmother used to also, and a lot of statements that didn't mean a lot to me when I was young started to mean something to me the older I got and the closer I got to retiring myself. And she would say, I'm living on a fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
And that fixed income, whether it be Social Security, whether it be, you know, your pension, that depends on how you're going to live. And so fixed income to some people means that they can only, buy this amount of groceries, because again, going back to her other point, money doesn't grow on trees. So a fixed income means if I'm going to get $400 a month, I have to live with those $400 a month. And that becomes very, very difficult, right? So it has to do a lot of budgeting and a lot of things that you can't have, right? And that's fine if that's the case, but you want to put yourself in a position where you have a little bit more so that you can, do some of the things you want to do in life, right? And that's not only for the rich. And that's why I said that, I want to have this conversation, because so often we don't realize that there's an opportunity. I mentioned, income tax time. Why, if think about that, can I use some of that money? It is what folks, it's your money, it's your money coming back to you, but it is an amount of money that you're getting that's a little bit more than your regular paycheck a month. Why not put some of that aside? I think about these stimulus checks that have been coming out, folks, $1,400, taking the $1,400 and going to buy some things that are intangible, right? Things that don't have any value. We really have to start to think about what's important and what has value. How do you start to create assets, right? And that's when I talk about, having, wealth, or we're talking about assets, because assets are what's going to help you get to, that final destination that you're in. Assets are going to put you in a position to do some of the things you really like in life. And assets are those things that really talk about the wealth that you have, that you're able to pass down and hopefully start to create that generational wealth. So when we think about, those extra dollars that we're getting, start to think about how can I get, use this money so this money is going to grow. Right? How can I make my money grow? And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But to your point, starting off with a plan. And the plan, and when you mentioned the car, right? I understand that we all need, especially around this, you need a car to get around. But do we need to have the hottest, the best, and the brightest, right? And that's something that we also, it's a change in mindset. We have to, when you're thinking about, you have to think about your specific position. You can't try to live, outdo the Joneses, or think about what someone else has. And that's why, when people ask me, how'd you get there? I try to tell a story. I got there by starting piece by piece, bit by bit. I was in debt, and still in debt as far as my house is concerned, but that's an asset to me. But I was in debt just like everyone else. But I started to think, hey, in order to do what I need to do, I need to figure this out. So I started pulling back some things. So when you see me with anything I have, please know that I've planned wisely so that I can put money away, and I maybe that a sliver, if I have the opportunity, I'll do those extra things. So it's really about, what's my plan, what's going to get in the way of my plan, and what's important to me. And I get it. Having a new car, watching others have whatever is very tempting. But you have to understand that, going back to debt, what that does is prevent you from being able to live your life, being able for you to, do those other things, being unprepared if an emergency comes up, right? So, I always thought about you have the car, but you have a car and you can't go anywhere. You have a new car, you can't buy gas, right? And so don't put yourself in that situation. I like to believe that we can all get to a place. There was a book, and Keisha, you'll be able to help me. And I'm glad that I'm bringing this up, because I remember the book when I was a kid. It was called The Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And the young lady put, if I recall, like a nickel away a week or so, or something like that. Yes. Small amounts. And then by the time years went, she had a lot of money. All right. That nickel a day or that nickel a week really, turned into, wealth for her.
Right.
And so when I talk about that, we can all achieve it, maybe not as fast as the next person, but we have to have patience because the other side of it is dealing with debt, dealing with stress, right? Dealing with someone, not calling you, wondering when you're going to make that payment. Or say you take you're able to make all your payments, dealing with the fact that, you don't know what your future is going to hold, right? So, it's very important that we're very conscious about, the decisions we make a plan, make a budget, and follow your budget. And there are multiple tools out there, free tools, whether it's with your bank, whether it's, somewhere that you can Google, but there's multiple tools around budgeting, which can be helpful. And so it's important, a part of your plan is to make sure you have a budget. And this is something that you really want to be strict about. Again, going from here to there, going from A to B. I have to know where I'm trying to go and I have to know how I'm going to get there. And that budget's going to help you know how to get there. So I'm going to put a certain amount of money for my bills. I'm putting a certain amount of money in savings, and I'm putting a certain amount of money for fun. Now, again, if you find that certain amount of money for fun is pulling away from your savings or paying for that debt, then you put that fun off for a little while. Trust me, it will come. But we really need to start to make those decisions. And I'd love to ask, Keisha or Youssef, how do you feel about the position that you're in? As far as from a debt perspective, as far as planning for your future, are you comfortable? Do you feel like you have a plan that makes sense and you're able to achieve that plan? And does that plan, do you know that plan is going to get you?
Okay. Out of my grind entertainment like $1 billion baby records.
I'm sorry, Youssef, say that again.
Word out of my grind entertainment.
Yep.
Best in game records.
Yeah.
So you're saying you would like to start your own business? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, my own record company.
Your own record company. Okay.
See, so that's your goal, right? Youssef, do you have a plan to get to your goal?
Not really. I don't have enough money to do it.
Exactly. So Youssef, I'm glad that's a great example. And so many of us, right, we like to plan, but we don't, we like to have a goal, but we don't think about how we plan to get to that goal. And what's crazy about that is it's just easy to do that, right? It's, one would think, well, it's common sense, but so often if it's not something that you've seen, that you're used to, oftentimes when you think about financial education, financial literacy, it's not something that, everyone has a conversation about growing up. And I know that in New Jersey, that it's become a requirement in school, and which is a great thing, but oftentimes people don't realize that you're not going to get to your goal without a plan. So what I would ask you to do is when, really start to research where, what it takes for you to get a record company, right?
Yeah.
If that, I'm sorry, Youssef, say that again.
Not easy.
It's not easy, but it can be achievable. And I'll tell you this, this is what I tell everybody, I do some nonprofit work with children, and I always bring up John Henry, the fable of John Henry, where John Henry was racing a steamboat. John Henry used to make train tracks, and then they came up with a steam drill. And so John Henry raced the steam drill, and he said, before I let the steam drill beat me down, I will die with the hammer in my hand. And I always say that to say, you said that it's not easy. My reference to John Henry is it's not easy, but you keep trying and it is achievable. And so what I would tell you to do is come up with a solid plan, Youssef. Come up with what it is that you need to, what kind of equipment, what kind of money, what kind of overhead, what kind of capital you need to start open up your own music shop, right? Or music studio. And if it's $20,000, Youssef, don't think, or whatever the amount is, don't think that you can't do it. Say to yourself, how can I do it? And if how you can do it means that you have to save X amount of dollars, say $20 for the next whatever years, or say $100 a month for the next somewhat years. Make that your plan. And if you're currently in debt, think about how to get yourself out of debt. And there are a number of ways. In some situations, when there's credit card debt, there are a number of credit card consolidation or services that help you. There are free services. There are services that take a small amount to help you get your credit or pay for your credit. But use those tools, use those services, use whatever it is that you need to use to get yourself either out of debt or to create your budget. So if that means, Yusef, that there are a couple, that you're spending money every Friday, I like to go, get myself a cup of coffee, or I drink 3 cups of coffee a day. Cut this.
In the last month, I bought 3 video games.
Okay. And you know what's interesting about that, Yusef? You could only play with 1 video game at a time.
Yes, and I don't play them all at once. I don't play them all.
You can't play them all at once. So why don't you? What's that?
I barely play half of them anyway. In my movie too, I should trade them in to make money, right?
Hey, Yusef, there you go. And you could have not bought them and saved money. And so I really love the examples that you're giving, Yusef, because these are real life examples. And if you just think about it, Yusef, you just mentioned 3 video games. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and allow you to have one of those video games. You take that 1 video game. I mean, take those 2 video games back, which are about $100. There you have $100 there. And that $100, you could put that $100 in an interest-bearing account. And what interest-bearing means is an account that grows your money. So it makes your $100 in a month, your $100 is $100.50. Whatever the case is, you want your money to grow. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But to your point, Yusef, you just gave me everything that I would need to start my planning. You want to open up your music studio. Do your research around your music studio. How much is it that I need? All right. You come up with a budget. Why do you need a budget, Yusef? Well, a lot of people say, well, I know how to manage my money. Well, a budget helps you keep yourself true to yourself, because it's very easy, especially, and I'm going to give you an example, especially since so many of us now use our credit card. And I don't mean credit card as far as a American Express or a Visa credit. I'm talking about what we call our ATM debit card. That debit card, makes it so easy to get outside of your budget. Because back in the day when I was growing up, the way people budgeted themselves is they would put a certain amount of money in the bank and they take a certain amount in cash. And guess what? When that cash was done, they were done, right? They didn't go back to the bank and get more money. And that was their way of budgeting. But it's very difficult to budget in these days and times. You have your credit card is directly connected to your bank account. You have credit cards. You have Venmo. The fact that you don't see your money, physically exchange, physically go from hand to hand, you can lose sight of it. So it's very important that you budget. And so Yusef, again, come up with you have an idea, you have a goal, trust you can achieve that goal. What's interesting is everybody who's done something great, they all said it wasn't easy, but they were able to do it. So have a goal, understand that it's not, live in your lane, Yusef. What can you do? Not what someone else is doing. What is it that you can do? Make the right decisions by not buying 2 video games. And in the video game, once you finish using it, guess what? Take the video game and go sell it back and maybe get some money. But then also we're talking to Keisha here at the library. I've seen there's a number of video games that you can rent at the library. Strategies to save money. Think about other ways to do some of the things you're doing without having to spend money. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you, Yusef?
Yes.
Okay. And really, you can do it, but you have to be disciplined. So Yusef, I have some homework for you. What I like, and I do see you around, what I like you to do is go research what it takes to open up your own music studio.
Yeah,
And
independence music.
independent music studio. And then we're going to come and then let's think about what is the plan to get to that point.
Yeah.
As you start to get to making money, one thing is there are people out there, I mentioned people out there, that tools out there and services out there to help you with debt, to help you with your credit, but there's also tools out there or people out there that helps you grow your money. And what does that mean by growing your money? It could mean something different to everyone, right? Some people, it means, investing in the stock market. Some people, it means, getting a business and investing your money in a business so that it'll grow, so that that investment will grow you money. Some people means housing. Everybody has a different plan. And
I got an idea.
what's that?
I got an idea. My mother and Keisha might not agree. I might put my money in stock in WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment.
So do you know enough about WW and wrestling entertainment?
Yes, Vince McMahon is the owner, and the son-in-law is the CEO. Triple H is the CEO.
And do you know about their earnings? And so, you brought up a good point.
I forget it. Their earnings is not a lot right now because of COVID-19.
Okay, so that when you talk about that, we talk about, and you said Keisha and your mother may not like that. That's what we talk about risk. What kind of risk are you looking to take when when you're investing your money? You're talking about investment. And so what I would say is this, there's a lot of research you can do yourself, right? But there's also an opportunity to work with what they call financial planners. And I'll just tell you a story. What a financial planner is a person that gets certified and licenses to where they have, learned a little bit, may know a little bit more than we know about the stock market, about investing money, about helping you achieve your goals. And what's interesting about, financial planners is most people look at them as if they're going to steal their money. And it's good reason, right? In the past, there were, lax compliance rules. Individuals were making people buy, products that really don't work for them. But those things have changed. ERISA rules are in place, and individuals can only do things that, from a legal perspective, that makes sense for you. And so I always say this. I remember being young and a financial planner came to me and he was like, hey, can I get some time, sit down with you, look at your finance, look at how to grow your money. And first thing I asked is how much it costs. Now, and that's the first thing a lot of people, how much is it going to cost me? And then as I started to think about a little bit more, well, check this out. If I give him $1 and he's able to grow my dollar by 10 cents. So that's $1.10. And he says, I'm going to take 2 cents from that. So he gets 2 cents, I get 8 cents. Do I have is $1.08 more than I had when I had just $1? It is, right? So there are professionals out there that when you get to that point where you have that extra money, when you get to the point that you can, you're starting to think to, as you said, investing in WWE or whatever the investments will be, there are people that are out there that can help you get to that point or make the right decisions. They can help you. They can tell you, hey, Youssef, right now, maybe the WWE isn't the right thing to do. But right now, let's put your money in something that's an interest-bearing account that's higher than, when you have your money in a checking account. Think about this. When you have money in a checking account you should have your money in a checking account for that one reason, to cover checks, for whatever your checks are, to pay bills. I
know. My mother said I should try to put my money in, but I don't know enough about GameStop to put money in GameStop stock.
And again, Youssef, I would caution you to, do some reading, get a little bit of understanding yourself, but also work with somebody that understands that. So Youssef, you went right to the most risky, which is, the stock market. And that's not a bad thing to do. And I'm not pushing anybody away from doing that. You speak to an advisor, that may be a decision you want to make, but you want to make sure that the decisions that you make are decisions that make sense. You don't
Yeah.
want to gamble with your money, and find yourself where you're losing your money. So I know there's a lot of energy around, there was the GameStop around investing stocks. And again, depending on where you are, you decide what you want to do, but there are many other opportunities to invest your money. But the most important thing to do is make sure you know what you're doing, and don't be afraid to work with a professional that can help your money grow.
Yeah.
As I say, you want your money to work while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's something that's very important. So when we talk about what we talked about debt, we talked about, budgeting. We also want to talk about, making your money work for you. And, there are people that, I said checking account, which is the reason I said when you have your money, only put enough money in your checking account to cover the checks you need to write, is because the checking accounts are non-interest bearing accounts. So we know that inflation exists. So that means money or prices go up. Well, when you put your $100, say you have $100 in the checking account, and you don't need that money to write checks, that $100 is going to stay $100 for the next 10, 20 years, because there's no interest there. And so that $100 that may buy $100 worth of groceries today, those $100 worth of groceries will cost you $300. So it'll be about $20 worth of groceries, and your $100 isn't keeping up with it. So you want to think about putting your money in accounts or investments that's going to make your money grow. Oftentimes people immediately think about savings. And in a savings account, the interest rate is very, very low. So if you have money that you can put aside, talk to somebody, or consider putting your money into other investments outside of savings, because the return, right? So when I talk about interest rate and the return, I'm talking about the return, helping your money grow. So I use an example of checking has a 0%, interest rate, right? Your money isn't growing at all. The savings has a point, I don't know if it's 0.05 or 0.05% interest rate. So that means your money is growing, but your money is growing very, very slow. And there are other opportunities, other places to put your money where it'll grow a little bit faster. Again, that's where you want to talk to somebody who knows a little bit more about it, or if you are what is it, DIY, do it yourself. If you're a DIY type of person, you can go to YouTube, you can go research it online, but make sure that you're prepared before you start to make decisions. Because what did my grandmother say, Keisha? The first one about trees.
Oh, money doesn't go on trees.
Money doesn't grow on trees. So when you give up that money, when you lose that money, it doesn't come back, right? Just come right back to you. So you want to make sure you're making decisions that you're not going to put your money at too much risk based on the amount of risk you can take, and decisions that'll help your money grow. So again, I'll pause.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. So when it comes to saving and doing our research before we reach out to someone, what are some things that we should be looking for or focusing on or reading up on before we take that first step?
So first of all, I think it goes back to what your plan is and what your goal is and what your task, what your risk, how adverse you are to risk, right? Okay. And when I say that, meaning, how much time and the time horizon you're looking at, right? So a younger person like yourself, right? You have time for your money to grow. We know that the stock market has its highs and its lows, but at the end of the day, it usually is growing. So if you have time, you may want to think about, and I'll start with the time piece. You may want to think about something that's more risky, but has more of an upside, putting some money in the stock market, right? A person like me, when you're getting closer to retirement, and you need to start to use that money. Me going into the stock market where the stock market might be going up here, and then when I'm ready to retire, the stock market is way down here. That's something that that's a risk for me, and I can lose money. So you want to first of all think about how, what you're saving or what you're trying to use your money for. What is the purpose of your saving? Then you want to start to, research what are the best, the safest, depending on, starting out, what are the safest modes of saving with the highest interest rates, right? So you don't have to, and you want to diversify, right? So we want to have a little bit for, emergency savings. So when I talked about the low, liquid savings account, I talked about emergency savings. A savings account is where your money, there are no penalties. You can put your money in, and if there's an emergency, you can take your money out. So you want to have some type of account where there's some liquidity. Then you want to have some type of account. You want to have your checking account, an account that there's some liquidity should an emergency come up. And then you want to have some money, you want to put some money aside that can grow where you can't have that access to it, right? So have your savings, because I'm not saying put yourself in a situation where if you need money, you can't go and get the money. But so that's where you have your emergency savings. But then put yourself in a more disciplined investment where you can't immediately get that money, where that money is growing with higher interest, but you're penalized for taking that money out, because that'll put you in a place where when you're thinking about what you're planning for that future, that short term or long term, that's going to keep you disciplined, because you can't get to that money, but that money is also growing. And so there's different type of vehicles where there's short term, 5 years, there's long term, retirement, whatever the case may be. But when you said what you should start to research, what are the different modes of saving? Understand what the interest rate is. Understand compound interest. Why is it that you don't want to get a credit card that's 13%, right? Or you want to be very careful about how you're using your credit cards, right? Think about it. When you use your credit card to buy a pair of sneakers for $100 and you pay the bare minimum, that's the minimum payment, say $10 a month. Credit companies love that, because it's going to take you a year and a half or 2 years to pay for those pair of sneakers. It cost, the sneakers was $100. By the time you paid off the credit card, you paid $240, right? So really understand, I'm not asking people to be rocket scientists, but understand that there's different types, understand what the effects of debt are, right? What does that mean? Understand how to get out of debt. Understand when I'm trying to save money, what are my goals? And what are what are the options? Life insurance. I was going to talk about life insurance, but there are many options of saving money. There are different types of life insurance policies. There's a whole life policy and there's a term policy. And I'll talk more about life insurance, but I'm talking about from a savings vehicle. A term policy means you're just paying for a life benefit. There's no growth in that money. A whole life policy means that money is being, sorry about that. That money is being invested by the insurance company so that your money is growing. So you can borrow, so it's an investment and a life insurance policy. So if needed, you can borrow from that, or that money is growing for your retirement or for whatever that long term. So understand, there are different types of different options for investment, but you have to understand which option works for you. Is it long term? It's a short term. Where you're at where you are in your life, and what you're trying to achieve. And so I would start with there are a number of different short reads. Prudential has a site, prudential.com. You can go on and you can get to some education, but really understanding the importance of growing your money. I'm not asking people or the importance of investing, getting out of debt. We'll start with I call it, first you want to sustain yourself, right? Well, first you want to get out of debt, right? First out of debt, then you want to sustain yourself, then you want to start moving forward. So coming from debt to being out of debt, then at that point, that's where you're sustained. Then you start to think of how can I start to grow my money? And so really like doing your research, but not to the point where and maybe that you have to be the expert, because there are a lot of services out there, or to the point where you want to be an expert. But I would just start with doing some reading, going to the different sites and really understanding, investing. There are different YouTube, or there are different, what are they? And, not Facebook Live, but there are different folks that are doing things on Instagram, just talk about how to use them. Really, put yourself in a position where you just understand the basics of what I spoke about. And then if you don't want to go to that next level where you're doing your own investing, working with a financial professional. So, and I'm glad you said that, understanding what I said, we can all achieve it. Debt is when you find yourself in debt, understand that debt causes you not only, it causes you to be, it threatens your financial security.
Mhm.
It keeps you away from doing those fun things that you like to do, right? And it can cause you mental and physical stress.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you want to think about, okay, where I am in life. Okay, if I'm in debt, how do I get out of my debt? If I have some plans, how do I create a budget to achieve those plans? And then how do I make my money grow? So, I've mentioned a number of things, but, I don't know where you are in your position, but wherever you are, whether it's around, okay, let me start to think about investing, or how do I, if you're at that point where you're sustained and you're ready to make your money grow, then I would start to read around, investing. And I'm not talking about the stock market. I'm talking about, money market accounts. That's, talk to your banker. What is it that they offer? Are there accounts that work like a checking / savings account where I can make money while also being able to pay for my bills? And again, I'm not a financial advisor. I work with them. I do have a license for life and health insurance, right? But I would tell you that, it's important that when you're at that point where you're able to talk to somebody, unless you're, you can manage it yourself. And there's some people who do a great job of managing their own money. But, if you're not at that point, I would say, talk to somebody. And the great thing about it is we mentioned earlier about how much it costs. It doesn't cost anything to talk to them other than your time. And, putting a little bit of time away today makes for a much comfortable future tomorrow. So, the sky's the limit around what you can read, and it's important to do so. But what is most important, I could have talked to you I could have, had a presentation and taught you everything from A to Z around, the importance of compound, the importance of investing, compound interest, savings. But if you don't take action, none of that matters, right? And so, what is that? And what is it? Taking the first step, the quickest way to, get. What's that? I'm sorry, Yusef, did you say something?
I'm back. I went to get food.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming back. And that's, and Yusef, you went to get food. Hopefully it was cooking some food, unless again, making those decisions. Do I cook or do I go out? And that's everyone's personal decision. My point isn't, and when you're doing this, it's not about judging. It's not about comparing. And that's something that we constantly get ourselves into about, again, keeping up with the Joneses or even judging yourself. It's not about that. It's about where I am and where I want to go and what are the actions that I need to take. And I know we only have a few minutes. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. I was going to say we only have a few minutes left. And I did have a question regarding, do you have any authors or reading material that you would suggest that someone could read to get started, or something that you have maybe read recently or maybe years ago that you would highly recommend?
Well, the books that, they're, a lot of information that I've gotten, Keisha, has been just from talking to people, to be honest with you. Because for me personally, I find, and that's, as you know me, right? I find that you can learn most from hearing from someone's successes as well as their failures. Right. As far as, there are a number of books that are out there, and I don't think that any of them are bad, but I would, my is what I like to do most is like understand someone else's journey, because there's something that you may be able to relate to. And again, if reading a book inspires you to take action, that's fine. But if talking to someone also inspires you to take action, that's fine as well.
Right.
And I didn't realize, we can talk for a while, and I didn't realize how quickly time is going by. But there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about that's important, that a lot of folks don't really understand, and it's life insurance. I'm saying this for a number of reasons. One, because so often, and I see people, especially we had a tough year of folks, passing away, and so often I see people not being able to be buried. Right. And so people having to, come up with GoFundMe accounts or whatever they need to help, or getting everyone. So that's one reason. But life insurance also plays another role that so many of us don't realize, because so many folks, when they think about life insurance, the first thing they think about is burial insurance. So when you think about life insurance, they think, okay, I need $10,000 worth of life insurance. Well, life insurance is also an investment vehicle to help, maybe not you, but help your family create that generational wealth. And so when we think about how do we start to create what we call create generational wealth, where we can leave something to our children and so on and so on, life insurance is a great vehicle. So I wanted to share that. So when you think, and it's never too early to get life insurance. In fact, the younger you are, the cheaper it is. And when we think about those whole life policies, there are policies that you can pay up at a certain time, so then you don't have to worry about them, 20-year paid up life insurance. And then you can, that you have something to leave to folks, and you don't have to pay, you don't have to continue to pay for it. So life insurance is something that, when I just, coming back home, there was a funeral, and I've seen it time and time again, folks pass away, and their families left with having to try to figure out how to pay the bills that they've had. So, I know it seemed like it was like out of the blue, but life, out based on our conversation, but it was something that I really wanted to get in here, the importance of life insurance, not only to make sure that your family isn't burdened by, a loss of income and having to pay, bills with that, one less, income stream coming in, but it's also an opportunity to create that generational wealth, particularly in communities that haven't seen it, right? And so, it takes time to create wealth, right? And so life insurance is an opportunity to do so. So, I said this at the beginning, and I'm going to finish it. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? Right?
That's correct.
So take action, come up with a goal, and take action.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to share my screen so that everyone can get your contact information if they'd like to reach out to you to find out more information on, like you said, you mainly deal with life insurance. So they can reach out to you for that, or anything you may have discussed today.
Sure. And not only that, and I deal with life insurance, but there's 5,000, or there's a number of folks that can help with much more financial planning. So have them come to me with anything, and I can connect them to the right person to answer their questions. Again, a question costs nothing. And then again, as I said, think about it. If your dollar can go to $1.08 while paying a person 2 cents, why not do that? Right? A lot of times we don't want to make it. I'd rather have $1 than pay somebody, but you're going to grow your money, right? I'm happy to spend my money on a pair of sneakers, or I'm happy to spend my money on getting my nails done, or whatever the case may be, or spend your money on something that's really going to benefit you, right? Yeah. Right? So thanks everybody for having me.
Ted DiBiase.
I'm sorry?
Put your money where your mouth is, Ted DiBiase. I don't know what that means, but
that means, that could mean a number of things. And I remember Ted DiBiase, WWF.
Yeah, I didn't know Fabulous knew about that. He's old, Ted DiBiase.
I've been around a long time, Youssef. But yes, Keisha, please share my information again. I can answer any questions that I can, but I also can connect them to, I talked about financial advisor, but I could also, there are different services for debt. There's different services for credit cards, right? Anthony Smith did not, I didn't know all of this all of my life. And, credit card services that help you, minimize that credit card debt and get you out of that debt, right? And then helps to get your credit rating, because we know how important a credit, your credit score is. So yes, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you may have. Whether it's, directly related to, your personal situation, or if you have some questions, around some things that you'd like to hear more about. So feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, sounds great. And I'd like to thank you again for joining us today for this presentation.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed having you here today, and I must say I learned quite a bit. So thank you once again.
Thanks for having me, Keisha. You guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Me too. I got one question for you, Keisha. Is the library board meeting soon?